If you can hear me, I am just sending the link out, and we will be getting started in just a minute. I am running just a few minutes behind, and I will be with you in just a moment. If you have just joined me in just the last minute or two, I am sending out the link to one or two more places, and then I will actually start. We're just getting set up here. Thank you for your patience. And I do apologize for not attending to the chat at just the moment. I am got the last link I'm about to send out, and then we'll actually start the formal Q&A. Which is to say we will be starting at 4:35 at this point. I apologize for the late start. And there's that. Okay, so I do apologize for the late start. I see that there are already one or two people in the chat. Many of you are also chatting on WeChat, so I will be trying to take questions both in the YouTube chat as well as over here in WeChat. I'm going to try to monitor both. This is a first for us. We haven't done much YouTube live streaming before, so I apologize. There are a few logistical difficulties, but I think we've gotten through them. If you notice any trouble with the video or the audio, I hope that you will say something. And also, if Dr. Young, if you're listening, or Mr. Fu, if you hear this, if there's any issue with the stream, please do text my phone. I have a backup plan if I need to do something for the internet here. Anyway, oh, it sounds like there's an echo of some sort. I wonder what will be causing that. Maybe that will help. All right, so it sounds like the video is stuttering a little bit according to one of my students. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my backup option. Hold on just a second. As I switch over the internet here, you may the video may pause a little bit, but I should come back pretty quickly. Hang on just a second. That should be better. Okay, hopefully that's the end of the trouble here. Fingers crossed. I think I've got it reconnected and it should be without so much issue from here. I'm still waiting to confirm with YouTube here that they are actually receiving. the stream. Can somebody in the chat please confirm back to me that I am coming through successfully and without issues? Okay, so it sounds like there's still some video issues. So just in the sake for the sake of getting this going at all, I'm going to go ahead and cut video for just a second, and then, or I think what I'm going to do is, let's see, how can I do this? I'm going to. Okay, I think that should work a lot better, though I suspect that my video will look a lot worse now. It does appear, however, to remain stable at the moment. So for the sake of just doing a regular Q&A, I don't think you need to see me too much. We may run into a little bit of trouble when we try to run class at 5:30, but we'll deal with that then. P.S. Did that echo go away, or are we all still dealing with an echo too? And I should go ahead and point out, I think there's about a 20-second lag between what I say and between what you hear. So if I ask a question, I have to wait up to 20 seconds for you all to hear it before I even start to see it in the chat. But I think this should be good. All right, and I'm going to say as much in WeChat. Say that in the other two places. And one more. All right, okay, so I'm going to assume that everything's fine, unless someone can confirm that there's still some kind of issue, in which case we could, I suppose, continue trying to fix that. And I apologize, obviously, as with everything in tech, it's all fine until it's time to go live, and then suddenly everything breaks. But here we are. I think you all can hear me. So I wanted to clarify first, if any of the folks are current students that are expecting me to be teaching about the December contest, we're going to be doing that at 5:30. It's 4:30. So from 4:30 to 5:30, I'm running a Q&A, both for the classes that were offered last fall and for the classes that are going to be offered this spring, including some of the provisional ones, which we still haven't actually added to the inventory yet, but I'm trying to figure out if there's enough interest in students to add those courses. This is essentially an Ask Me Anything, so anybody can ask me anything, whether they're a current student or the parent of a current student or prospective student or prospective parent. So I will be running the Q&A at 5:30. We will switch over and I will do the beginning of the online session for anyone who's interested, in which we'll be covering the problems from the USACO competition. This is designed specifically for the advanced students who are already at competition level. We'll be going over the answers, just like we were for our virtual boot camps back in November and December. It gives you a feel for what one of the classes would look like. For a very beginner programmer, it might be a little intimidating. The students that are competing have been programming for a little bit now. But I'll do the first problem probably of 3 here on YouTube, and then we'll switch over to a regular, probably a Google Hangouts-based treatment so that I can actually deal with the students real time. So with all of that said, does anybody have any questions that I can answer? No questions. Why am I not surprised? Well, this session is also being recorded, and people will be presumably watching after the fact as well. So when there are questions, I will take those with priority, and I will stop and answer them. But if there are no questions that I can see, then I will just sort of be on autopilot a little bit. I'm also trying to do a few different things at once. There seems to be a few people chatting on WeChat, as I said, as well as chat going on here on YouTube. So one thing, if you're following along on WeChat, I do not read Chinese. Not yet anyway. It's on my list of things to learn. So if you ask a question in Chinese, hopefully Mr. Fu will be able to re-ask it to me in English so that I can answer it. Okay, so let's see, where should I start? So to date, we have offered, well, there's a number of programming classes at Shengmeng. Some of them are offered by Dr. Yang, and he teaches Python generally for 4th to 6th grade. And I have been teaching now for a year, and I take I'll take some 6th graders, but generally at 7th grade and up. And the course offering in 2019 was exclusively based on USACO. So let's see, there's some people asking some things, so I'm going to pause for just a second and see. I think it's just announcements about me being here and saying all this stuff. Oh, and here's Young saying that I should... yeah, let me show you what we were thinking and how things may change or not. So give me just a second to bring up the slide. I'm going to put it over here. And I'm new to this form of streaming, so I will need to figure out how to switch over. Hang on just a second. All right, so I've got this up, but I bet you all can't see it yet. So I need to, let's see, go over here, and I'm going to put myself in the bottom right hand of the screen so you can still see me, but also presumably at this point you can see my screen. Hopefully the video resolution is good enough that you can kind of follow. So when we first started in January of 2019, almost a year ago, the idea was that we were going to create a pipeline, and that we would have so-called Bronze 1, Bronze 2. Those were our first courses. And after passing 2 classes, I expected that students would be able to pass the Bronze competition. And then we were going to have Silver 1, Silver 2, and we're going to have Gold 1, Gold 2, and we're going to have Platinum 1, Platinum 2 at some point. That was under the assumption that I was going to be having mostly 10th and 11th graders, actually, or maybe 9th graders, essentially high school. And that students would have some prior programming experience. And what I've determined and what happened was we got a lot of interest from middle schoolers, especially 7th and 8th graders, who wanted to be ready for USACO, but were slightly younger and had less experience and needed more time. So the idea that you could take just 2 classes, having done no programming ever, and place in Bronze was optimistic. For the extremely motivated and extremely high-achieving middle schooler, occasionally this will work out, but most students, even very good students, will have trouble. And the other thing I realized was that this is not a typical course or a set of courses in which you memorize material and then you get to a final exam and you do a multiple choice and you demonstrate that you've memorized the material. this is much closer to, it's kind of like shop class or something, where you walk into a room with a saw and wood, and it's like, okay, you build me a table, you have 1 hour. Even if you've sat there memorizing the material, if you're not very good with the tools, you may not end up building something that looks good or that works well. So what we have switched it around to, as of fall, what's on my screen is the current offering for USACO, which is to say that you start in Java for USACO if you've not done Java before, and then you will start in Rising Bronze after that. And Rising Bronze, Advanced Bronze, Rising Silver, and so on are our labs. And unlike a course, some parents ask me, oh, well, my son was in Rising Bronze last term. Shouldn't he be in Advanced Bronze this term? Well, maybe, maybe not. The way these are built is a little unusual in that students can level up at any point. I want to call out Morris Wu. I don't think he's in the channel, but Morris started with us in Java for USACO in September, and he's currently enrolled for Advanced Bronze starting in a week. But honestly, actually, he misenrolled. He should be at Rising Silver because he just passed the USACO competition a few weeks ago. So Morris managed to go all the way from Java for USACO to Rising Silver in 1 semester. And the way I've structured these labs is that each of the labs is, at any point in time in the year, roughly learning the same techniques and tech. They cycle once every year, so you would only see repeated material if you were in a given level for more than 1 year. But because they're all covering roughly the same things at different levels of sophistication, a student can level up, or even if they wanted to take a break, level down for a little bit and keep going without interruption. So you could spend a few weeks in Rising Bronze, take a few weeks after that up in Advanced Bronze, see how you do. If you don't like it, you're back down in Rising Bronze. If you pass Bronze altogether and you're in Silver, you could level all the way up to Rising Silver. It's a very flexible system. And essentially what qualifies people for a class is this ranking system over here. You can see if you have no rank, you're in the beginner class. Java for USACO is currently what we offer. And as you demonstrate your ability to solve competition problems, then you gain rank. We haven't formalized the rank system yet. I had originally imagined there would be an award ceremony where people's rank advancement would be recognized and parents could celebrate with kids. We haven't done that yet. We may be starting to do that this summer. But I'm going to start talking about the ranking system more and more, especially because parents come to me and they ask, did my son fail? Or they come to me and they ask, is my student making progress? How do I tell? And a given student may need to spend up to a year at a given level. Or if they're working really hard at it, they may spend only a few weeks and level up just like that. Generally, if someone's able to do it in a few weeks, it's because they had advanced training, maybe not necessarily in programming, but if you've got a deep background in math or puzzle solving, or you've done a lot of like Lego Mindstorm or something like that, some of these problems and the ways for solving them are far more familiar. Whereas if you've never done anything like this before, then it can take a little while to click. And some of it is not just figuring out how to do the problem, it's figuring out how to do it fast enough. So it doesn't matter if you're still in the same level and you're seeing the same sorts of problems, as long as you're getting faster at solving them. Rising Bronze, last term, I had my star girl student, Lily Zhang was in there, and then I had some students who had just gotten out of Java for USACO at the end of fall and were at the other end of the spectrum. It's not a question of how good or bad you are. Lily had been working for a whole year and was about 2 times or 3 times faster than any other student in that class, whereas some of the students who'd just gotten out of Java for USACO, notably, were slower. That's to be expected. As they practice, as they drill, and that's why we call it a lab instead of a class, they will get better. And once they get fast enough and good enough, and they have enough repertoire for answering the various kinds of problems that get asked in competition, they will start leveling up in rank, and as they get access to the higher level ranks, they get access to the higher level labs. Currently, we are offering all the way through Rising Silver this year. I mean to say this term. Starting on January 10th, I'm offering Rising Silver for the first time. That doesn't mean that I won't add Advanced Silver. If the students in Rising Silver start doing good at the Silver level problems, in order to continue advancing this pipeline further, I'm going to have to add more steps. The only reason these don't exist yet is because we don't have enough students that are interested at that level. So we will have Java for USACO, USACO Rising Bronze, USACO Advanced Bronze, and USACO Rising Silver starting in a week. By the way, up here at the top, Java for USACO, a few students have come to me and said, Mr. Dowdell, can we compete in languages besides Java? In fact, some parents as well would prefer different languages, and that's fine. USACO is not a language-specific competition. We chose Java because most students are and their parents are presumably interested in the APCS, which is taught in Java, and there's a little bit of complementary learning that goes on if you take that and this. But if you wanted to compete in Python, there's no reason you couldn't do that. If you wanted to compete in C++, in fact, C++ is actually the dominant language in USACO if you look at the numbers. And I've had one or two students come and actually, even though they're in a supposedly Java-based class, are solving the problems in C++. I know all three languages. I can help students with all three. And we are considering even this term, one of the extra classes that we haven't added yet, but which I'm asking for feedback on, is a basically Python for USACO. Or I've called it Placing in USACO using Python, which would meet on Saturdays. We aren't offering that yet, but I'm considering offering that based on interest. And we will be amending this flow so that presumably there are multiple courses at the top that give you a language you can compete in, and then the actual labs assume that you're proficient enough in your language of choice to be able to solve the problems, but we'll focus on how to solve the problems and the algorithms and the techniques and the thought patterns that go into solving it, rather than necessarily how to code it. Because actually most of these problems, the challenge is not figuring out how to code it, it's figuring out how to solve it. You spend more time on paper or in your head trying to figure out what's going on or what to do than you do actually just figuring out, oh, how do I write this line of code, or how do I write this for loop, or how do I add these variables. That's not where you're spending your time. Or at least I hope that's not where my students are spending their time, because the challenge is language agnostic, as they say. And generally a solution in one language would translate very easily to a solution in a different language. So students in an ideal scenario would get to pick their own language. We've kind of focused on Java to date because it's a little bit more challenging to teach a polyglot class where everyone's coding in a different language at the same time. But if there is demand for these different languages, I will support it. And I have already been sort of supporting it. So I'm going to take a pause because I've just been talking into the mic now for almost 20 minutes. I haven't seen any questions on the YouTube stream. And I'm going to check WeChat real quick. Hold on. No questions in WeChat either, so I guess I'm just going to keep going. I am interested in talking about the non-USACO courses I'm thinking about, but before I get to those, just to finish up the USACO. So I have had the privilege now of teaching approximately 45 students at Shengmeng since January. Some of them are at various stages. A few are taking a break. One or two have told me that programming's not their thing, which is fine. They've left. But I have approximately 10 students who I have either passed bronze or, in my opinion, are capable of passing bronze. I am going to be talking with them privately tonight for those that did not pass bronze to figure out how we can get them there, because every one of them, by my assessment, should be able to get the points necessary to pass bronze. So this curriculum is working. The students are getting better. With drilling, they are demonstrably in class managing to get so-called boxes to go green. That's what a USACO competition is. You're given a programming prompt. You're given a number of test cases where you don't get to see the input or the output file, but they take your program and they run it against the input file and check it against the output file. And if it matches, you get a box in the report that goes green. If it doesn't match, it's red, or if it fails, it's red and you don't get points. So when we say a box going green, that means you got points for the test case. I have got students that are able to get all boxes green in like 30 minutes, and you have 4 hours for a single problem. And you have 4 hours to do 3 problems. So at that rate, these students are already operating at low silver, and many of them came in with almost no background at all in programming and started the equivalent today of Java for USACO. So I am quite pleased with the program that we ran over the last year, and I have incorporated a number of learnings into the new year. And I will pause for a second. 1 or 2 people have also contacted me for generalized tutoring, so feel free also to reach out to me for your own needs as you need. But the purpose of this particular Q&A session is to cover the courses that we're either currently offering in about a week, starting in a week, or the ones that we're thinking about offering either starting in a week or 2. So that's where I'm going to focus my time. I'm always interested to know what people want and what people want to do, and I am attempting always to support that as best as I can. So that might be time to say my biggest learning is there are a number of students that, oh hey, here's some questions. Okay, so there are 2 questions, and as I said, those will take priority to anything I'm going to say. So I'll take the first one from Gia. Not familiar to USACO. There is no age limit. And it is designed for 10th and 11th graders, so students should not be terrified or upset if they sit down and try to take it and it's difficult. You could imagine someone who's just passed Algebra 1 sitting down for, I don't know, an Algebra 2 or pre-calc exam or something and saying, I haven't learned this yet. That's fine. The competition is held, it's not one either. There are monthly competitions for 4 months contiguous in the year, December, January, February, and March. If you go to usco.org, you can find out more. We just finished the December contest a few weeks ago, and the January contest is coming up in just a few more weeks. I'll go ahead and go there. The nature of it is it's free to compete, and you don't go anywhere. Students actually lock themselves in their bedrooms generally or wherever they feel comfortable. They have to have access to the internet. They have their own computer, and they code for 4 hours. They get to choose the 4 hours that they want to compete in as well. So you can see over here the contest schedule. There's usually 4 or 5 days when the contest window is open, and then students say, I want to start my contest. And they'll say, are you sure? You've got 4 hours from the moment you click accept. And they click accept, and then they have 4 hours countdown timer to solve as many test cases and get points as possible. And they are competing in the sense that the top level of performance passes on to the next round. So I can't tell you if you get, in a particular contest, people ask, do I need to get 750 out of 1,000? Do I need to get 800 out of 1,000 to pass? It depends on how the other students in the competition do. But generally speaking, if you get 25 test cases out of 30 or better, you will be advanced to the next round. And if you get all of the test cases to go green, it will automatically stop the contest and say, okay, you're awesome. We're automatically advancing you to the next round. Would you like to compete in the advanced round now? So you can force it to let you into the next level up. For bronze, it would be silver. Otherwise, you have to wait until after the contest. We see how all the students did that competed, and the top students will be advanced to the next round. And again, there's no cost, there's no age limit, and the sooner you get started, obviously the more time you have to make it to the platinum levels or beyond. It's fun. And those who get to gold level or higher seem to have some benefit. I can't guarantee anything, obviously, but college admissions and even some internships at local Silicon Valley companies like to see coders who have demonstrated gold level proficiency or higher. There is the possibility, you can see it on my screen, that if you do very well, you will be asked, if you are a United States student, to represent the United States at the IOI, which is the International Olympiad. There are only 4 students chosen from the entire country to represent the country at the IOI. It's like the Olympics, but for programming. I would be absolutely thrilled if one of my students was chosen for this. I don't expect it, and I don't want to put pressure on it because, as I say, there are 20,000 or something students expected this year to participate in the USACO competitions, and only 4 of them are going to be chosen to go on and represent the United States. So it's an extremely prestigious and highly unlikely honor. But anybody who is willing to go after it and put in the effort, I will take you as far as you want to go. It's that simple. Let me see what else there is here. Mr. Fu is asking, did not pass in the first round. What's going on? So here's the other benefit. There's a contest in December, January, February, and March. And there's a repeating phrase that I tell my students over and over again. A programmer is always wrong. In most professions, we focus on trying to be right and being right the first time. The interesting thing about a USACO competition is you can submit a solution as many times as you want, and you could be wrong, and as soon as you're right, it doesn't matter. You get all the points. Imagine being able to take a test as many times as you wanted, and as long as you do it inside of the time limit. And if you ever get all the questions right, you got a 100% A on the test. That's how they do it in programming world. That's the mindset. That's how software engineers are in the professional world as well. We're always committing bugs. And in fact, the general MO for many companies is put it out whether it's right or wrong. We'll find out if it's wrong later and fix it. That's called a bug. So programmers are always rushing. And the mentality we use is a programmer is always wrong. The goal is to be wrong for the least amount of time. So for the students that did not pass in December, first of all the students that were in the advanced bronze class, specifically, I'm talking to you guys, you could have passed, and you will pass, and I don't want you to feel bad about that, and I'm going to repeat that when we get to the 5:30 class. But with every shot, you get a new attempt, and it doesn't matter how many times it takes you. All that matters is that you don't give up. So if we didn't get it in December, I want you to keep practicing. I want you to get faster. I want you to keep progressing. And then you'll get another shot. We'll get it in January, and if we don't get it in January, we're going to get it in February. And if we don't get it in February, we're going to get it in March. I hope we don't have to go to December 2020, but very worst case, none of you are 12th graders, we can do that too. So it is a matter, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint for the USACO courses. If you keep making progress, and all of you have been making progress that have been with me in class, if you keep making progress, you will place. And if you want to make progress faster, you have to put in the time. It's that simple. It's just like anything else, like piano or violin or running a marathon itself or martial arts. If you just show up to class and then you go home and you don't do any homework and you don't think about it the rest of the week, you're going to get better, but you're not going to get better. You're not going to get better as faster as those students who are putting in an hour of practice every evening. Right now, there's not much that can be done about the January competition in terms of time. It's 2 weeks away, less than, I think. Even if you started trying to cram for it right now, you're probably just going to burn yourselves out and be tired on the day of the competition. But hopefully you all have been practicing over Christmas and over the New Year. And if you haven't, don't worry. We do have some time to get back up to speed and to start making progress. The thing I want to underscore, though, is those who are probably most worried about it, I don't want you to worry, because I don't know what happened in December, but everyone that I've been teaching should be at approximately silver level that was in the advanced class. So I think it's just a matter of put less pressure on yourselves and try until you get it. And we'll talk about that more at 5:30. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick check to make sure there are any questions, and then I'm going to talk about some other stuff. Hold on. I also apologize about my voice. I was afraid I was going to be hoarse, actually. I've had a cold for the last week. Okay, all right, so I was asked about learnings for USACO courses, and one of the big things that I've learned is there are a number, there's two things here that are a mark for success. One is, does the student have a buddy? Especially for beginners, programming is hard and it's alien. It's not how humans actually think. And the general temptation when somebody gets started on this is, I'm not good enough for this. I have to stop. I have to do something else. Nobody's good enough for programming, and everybody doubts themselves. That's natural. That's normal. Instead, what I found is where success comes is when you come in with a best friend or a group of friends and you all do it and you all start laughing because everybody sucks at it, frankly. And then you realize, oh, I'm not like particularly bad. Or, yeah, okay, maybe this is normal. And more importantly, when you come in with friends, you can have fun with it. I found that actually the students that progress the fastest are the ones that have friends that they can have fun with. Especially if they're meeting outside of class. So that's number one. I keep trying to encourage more and more. So the problem is USACO is not a team-based competition. There are some team-based competitions. It's not USACO. But nonetheless, I am still trying to have people compete in teams as much as possible while still preparing people for the eventual reality that they will have to compete as an individual. Because I find that it helps people have more fun and progress. Especially because also, to some degree, you learn something the best when you have to explain it to somebody else. And you aren't doing that when I'm talking and you're sitting in the seat. So when students are together and have to explain it to each other, then they actually figure out what they themselves don't yet know. So that's all one part of it. The other part of it, though, is students that really like pressure and they like to compete and they like the idea of medaling and they like the idea of go, go, go until they can succeed. They do better in the USACO courses. But some students have come to me and said, Mr. Dowdell, I'm kind of here because my mom wants me to be here. Or, I like programming, but I'd rather do something that's like project-based where I can, make a little progress each week and it's a little less stress. In other words, certain students' temperament and mindset is not in competition. Which is precisely, you've seen, especially those of you in the WeChat channel, we're proposing some new possible courses on Saturdays. And they're not really courses. I'm calling them special interest groups precisely because I don't even want them to have like a syllabus or a rubric of any kind. It's a student comes to me with an idea, and I help them explore that idea. It's more of a mentoring session. And as more students come and as we figure out what people want to do, we can formalize it towards a course. I can teach a number of things, and what I'm finding is a lot of people want, they're like, I want to make an iPhone app or an Android app or a web app, or I've heard about making services for the cloud. Some people say, hey, I want to make a video game. I'm not sure my mom and dad are into that, but that's actually really what I want to do. Or some people say, I want to explore virtual reality, or 3D, 3D modeling, 3D math. How do they do, animations, or how do they do how can I make something that I could print in a 3D printer? I think there is a great deal of opportunity there, even for those parents and students that are interested in USACO, for a more free-form exploration of the industry and of the craft of coding. Because sometimes when we get the bit in our mouths and we're rushing straight for the finish line, you can actually look at this. There's a Dan Pink TED Talk where they've demonstrated that people sometimes that are focused on things like trophies and rewards actually take longer to get to the trophy and the reward than people that are permitted at least some space for creativity and exploration. So with all that in mind, we are considering offering 2 new special interest groups so the Python for USACO is a special interest group at the moment, but would be taught more like my existing USACO courses. The 2 that I'm proposing in the flyer that has been linked in WeChat and elsewhere, one is very open-ended. It is basically a JavaScript course with a number of different technologies and potential product lines for making your own interesting project, whatever that is. We would cover React, React Native, and Node, which opens you up entirely to the realm of web apps, phone apps, tablet apps, and talking to servers that sit in the cloud. That's a very wide space. We're not going to do all of it, but we could do any of it. That's my point with that one. With the other one, I happen to have a background in Unreal as well. I am especially those who want to learn how to make something that looks like a game, or those whose parents won't allow them to make a game, but that are interested in more things like, virtual reality or 3D printing, or how do you deal with 3D vector math, things that are actually going to become more important as we switch the user interface away from the browser and the 2D screen into the 3D space. We all know it's coming. That's going to be very useful for the future. And PS, Unreal is all in C++, so those students who wanted to learn hardcore C++ for USACO, I'm not going to be able to touch that directly and head on, but you will get experience that will be useful for that. Mark is asking about a WeChat channel. Mr. Fu, I hope you can fix that one with him directly. I don't know how to link actually to WeChat from the YouTube chat. There is actually an open question about whether Python would be better for USACO. Conventional wisdom has been that Java and C++ are faster languages, C++ especially. Python is notably a slow language because of the so-called global interpreter lock. It's not multi-threaded. And generally, it's made to be fast to code in, not necessarily fast to run. They made progress 10 years and 20 years ago. Well, not 20, it's not that old, but at least 10 years ago with PyPy. And some of this stuff has native libraries like SciPy behind it. But even still, first of all, you're not guaranteed that you're going to have access to the fast libraries with a stock Python install, which is all that you would have access to in the USACO competition. And even the GIL, the Global Interpreter Lock, is a major issue for speed. But it turns out it doesn't matter quite so much. If you look in the fine print for USACO, they give different time limits for programs to different programming languages. And they give different runtime constraints, like how much memory it's allowed to use and how it's allowed to access CPUs. So I haven't actually seen a true benchmark that proves that Python is not a true contender to C++ and Java. It doesn't look like it is, because when you look, I can show it to you here. When we look at the most recent competition results, it tells us how many students there were in each language. There were 7,000 in C++, 4,000-ish in C++, 5,000-ish in Java, and only about 3,000 total in both versions of Python. So by vote, if a vote is ahead, as it were, of a student coding, Python is not as popular. But I suspect, actually, that at least for the sake of meddling at the bronze and silver level, it may be a better language. Because the trick at those levels is not to write fast or good code. It is to come up with a solution and be fastest to write it. And Python is a much faster language to write in, and it's a much better language to explore in, realize that you're wrong, and then go back and edit what you're doing. So I'm very excited about potentially exploring Python with USACO, Python for USACO if there are any students that are interested. Also, this reminds me, a few students have come to me, especially from Harvest Park Middle School. I don't know what's going on there, but it appears to have an extremely active programming club, and some dedicated students and parents. there's interest in doing some Python courses. Generally, Dr. Young teaches the Python, but if people for some reason wanted me to come in and teach Python, I have coded in Python professionally. I have done AI stuff in Python. You know, if people wanted to learn some TensorFlow or PyTorch, or I don't know what they have in mind, but if there is an existing base of students that already know how to program in Python, but they have a particular interest, because we can't just do anything, but because it'll get out of hand. But if there's a group of 5 to 10 kids that all want to learn this one thing, we can start meeting, and I can teach you what you want to know. Okay, so I'm going to take just a moment here. We have about 10 more minutes for questions, and then I'm going to switch over to the actual December contest discussion. I don't see any questions that are lingering in the YouTube chat. I'm going to check WeChat just a second. I end up running WeChat on my phone, so it's always a little awkward to go look at it. Okay, all right. P.S. If anybody ends up watching this after the fact, I know we lost a few of you because of all the stuttering and the logistical trouble at the first 15 minutes. You can feel free to message me your questions in private on WeChat or even email me. I'm always available. Question from William. Is a solid understanding of pointers in C++ absolutely necessary for higher levels of USACO? Absolutely necessary? No, I don't think so. Absolutely necessary to be very proficient in C++? Yes. But some of the languages that allow for USACO competition, like Python and Java, you aren't even allowed direct access to the pointers in those languages. So you don't need necessarily to understand what's going on there. That said, students, and this is, no one should worry about this if you're just Java all the way. You won't even know what a pointer is per se. But those who understand what I'm saying, mastering pointers is a very good step in becoming a better programmer in general, no matter what you want to do. Not just USACO, I mean anything. And it's especially necessary if you want to go into, if you wanted to make Windows or Mac OS, the actual kernel level development and systems development, understanding what's going on in pointers is critical. So if you've got the time, I would recommend it. If you've not got the time, don't sweat it. I imagine some people that can't ask the question would possibly want to know who I am, what my deal is. You can read about me a little bit on the course descriptions. They have a little blurb about the instructor, but my name is James Dowdell. I Harvard class of 2007 computer science. I've worked at a number of different places, some tech startups, some large companies. I was at Google. I was at Twice, which was bought by eBay. I was at eBay. I have done a lot of contracting work, a lot of freelancing work, and I'm currently running my own company from my 9-to-5 job. I can't talk about most of my clients. My biggest one is a Fortune 500 here in the Bay Area that I'm sure you know, which unfortunately I cannot confirm or deny which one it is. And I have done all sorts of different things professionally. I did Android and iOS app development. I have done React web app and also React Native, Android and iOS development. I did back-end services when I was at Google. I was an AdWords engineer. I've done a lot of work on the back end. I actually ran my own video game company for a while when I was much, much younger. Though I have ties to the game industry and continue to assist and consult where necessary. I have, let's see, what have I not covered there? I was an AI guy at times when I needed to be. I am myself not a PhD, but I work primarily with PhDs. I tend to be an implementing engineer in practice. So The researchers come up with what they want to do, and I tell them how we actually will take what's in the paper and get it actually built and launched. So I have operated a full spectrum of small and large operations and large organizations and small organizations. And as a result of all of that, I have dealt with a number of languages in a number of situations. Go, Java, Scala, Python, C, C++, some assembly even. I've been all over. The teaching, some people say, why did you get into teaching, or what's the deal with that? I did a lot of teaching back when I was at Harvard. Actually, some of you may have heard of David Malin. Is a very famous teacher now who does the CS50 MOOC that has 10,000 people or something enrolled online. David and I actually started teaching together before he was famous for Henry Leitner, who runs the extension school at Harvard. And I got to teach other undergrads because I was good at it. And I've been told that I'm a natural teacher for a long time, even when I was a high schooler still. So I've always enjoyed teaching. I didn't quite do so much tutoring and teaching after my early 20s because there was frankly a lot more money to be made doing other things. But I've realized in the last few years that the more money I make, the more miserable I seem to be. And I decided that I would start doing teaching again on the weekends and in the evening hours about a year and a half ago. So I have been tutoring and mentoring and teaching a little bit outside of Shengmeng, but the program at Shengmeng has been doing quite well. So that is actually my majority focus at the moment. And I found it extraordinarily rewarding. When they first told me I was going to be teaching middle schoolers how to code, I almost balked and ran away because I can't teach middle school. But I ended up in the classroom, and it seems to be working, and I enjoy it. And especially the students that happen to be at Shengmeng are some of the best and the brightest. And I can see the potential, and it's absolutely amazing. I've had no trouble with people like I expected with middle school, because that's how middle school in America tends to be. Graffiti and gang fights would burst out, and people would be talking back to the teacher, and I would have absolutely no control. That's not been the case. Every student comes in, they pay attention, they're nice, they're calm, they're quiet, everything's clean, everything is great. They're actually operating at many years past their age and maturity and preparedness. And because they are ready, and because I think I can help, and because, teaching the next generation and instilling the right knowledge and values actually is the best thing I can do to make the world a better place, I found this an extraordinarily rewarding thing. So I am very excited about ramping up my involvement in teaching, possibly even at the expense of ramping down some of my private contracting. So that's a bit about the teacher. All right, I'm getting a note that the network bandwidth is a bit of an issue. I'm not sure I can do too much more than I have, and the note that I'm getting here is that we're largely okay, actually. So hopefully, if it stutters a bit, even in the moment, the replay should be solid. P.S. I think I've already said this should be available after the fact as well. All right. I kind of expected a few more questions. Again, if you haven't had a chance to say what was on your mind, go ahead and message me any way you can or would like. I am always open to answer things. And I will spend just a minute or two here in case anybody has anything left, and then we will go to the December contest review. I want to make sure before I start the December contest review that all of the students that I'm expecting are currently present, because I don't want to get started without anybody that said they were coming and isn't here. So let me bring up the list. Okay, I think there was a little cut in the video there, but I'm hopefully back. Are there any lingering questions here? Okay, I think it might be time to switch to the course review. So again, we're going to, for the first 15 or 30 minutes, I'm going to be doing it in YouTube. Here on this very same channel, and that's just for the sake of anyone who might want to watch this that's not currently a student, or that might want to watch this after the fact that's a prospective parent or student. Then we're going to switch to the usual thing that we do on Hangouts. I think if there's enough, I know that there were a few students in Rising Bronze that also took the competition and might be interested, and they're not currently enrolled in the Hangouts. So I'll deal with that dynamically when we get to approximately the 6 o'clock mark. Not for the Mr. Food, not for the next whole hour. I'm going to try to cover the first problem here, and then for the sake of privacy and also for just honoring students that were already enrolled in our courses, I'll go ahead and do these 2 other problems in a different capacity somewhere else. Okay, yeah, so I'll be covering the first problem, and before I start, I want to make sure that the following folks are on the stream. If you guys could message off in chat, because you said you were going to be here, and I want to make sure that I've waited for you if you're not yet here. Anthony Yu, Nicholas Chang, or parents, Dennis Fang, Daniel Guo, Nicholas Lowe, Eric, sorry Eric, I don't actually know your last name, and Sising So. If you all could say that you are present and can hear me in the chat, and then I will actually get started here. And I don't have to completely wait while we wait. The December contest, by the way, you can see it. You can sign in on usaco.org. Once again, for anybody that's curious, you can always create an account for free. You register in the same area. It's showing me logged in, so the register button is missing. But come over here, log in as you normally do, as we've been doing in class. And then the December contest is on the main page. It's not under contests yet, so you don't go here. Go to the main page, usaco.org, and you'll see results are here. It's not just the results. Beyond the results are also the individual problems. We're going to be looking at the bronze level, and we're going to be looking at cow gymnastics right now. We'll look at where am I in livestock lineup later. Okay, so I've got only Anthony and Dennis saying that they're here yet, which makes me a little worried that we're missing some folks. I'm going to wait just another minute or two, and I'm probably going to email a little reminder here. Give me just a second. I will be present on stream, but I will be a little bit distracted while I'm doing this. Okay, so Okay, all right. So I just saw a whole bunch of people say they're here as well. That's great. So as a the students already know this, but anybody else who's watching, the nature of this is that we decided to cancel classes for students that were taking the contest that happened to overlap with course time. So some of the parents rightly wanted a makeup class. So this is technically a makeup class, but I decided that also I would go ahead and use it to explore the very same contest and the solutions. So that's the theme for tonight. We'll be looking over the 3 problems, and as I said, we're going to start with cow gymnastics. So I'm just going to go one by one through all of them. Once again, there is a small lag in the chat, and unlike how we have done this in the past, you'll have to chat to me if you have any question or issue or need me to pause. When we get to the problems later in a regular video chat, it'll work a little bit differently, and I'll explore that. But in the interest of not falling behind, let's go ahead and start with the first problem. Okay, so this is an example of what a problem actually looks like on USACO.org. Students just saw this a few weeks ago, and it was the actual active question. And we're going to go over figuring out how to solve this one. I'm not going to read you the entire problem. I assume that you've already looked at it and understand it a little bit. What I am going to go ahead and do, as I have been doing in my virtual bootcamp courses, I am going to go ahead and start up the, we've been using the app whiteboard, and rather than having to look at my screen a little bit too squinty-eyed, because I know it's not going to show up very well with the video the way it has been lately, I am going to find my mouse first of all. Okay, there we go. And where do I share this guy? Add people. Here we go. So that's the link, and I'm just going to copy and paste that into the actual chat over here. Okay, that's been pasted. The video is laggy. It could be you meant one of 2 things. Either it's stuttering or seconds behind. It is approximately 20 seconds behind, I think, from what I say to what you hear. But we'll do what we can, and I will fix it for problems 2 and 3 later. Okay, so with this particular problem, the key word here is pairs. As I've been covering with, I think, all of the students that are most interested in this, when you see pairs, you should also be thinking combination, and you should be thinking permutation. And the very first thing you should really be thinking about is an n by n matrix. There are n cows, and before I actually even get into the particular problem, I just want to do a little reminder, especially because we have some people that have not been in class with me before and who have never heard any of this. So I'm going to give you a very simple problem, or a simple idea anyway. It's not a full problem. Imagine that you had 3 students, Alfred, Betsy, and Charlie, and I'm just going to denote them as A, B, and C. Also, my apologies, I am drawing with an actual mouse, and I'm not very good at it. Normally I'd be at a whiteboard. If I keep doing virtual online stuff, I will get a tablet, but I don't have one yet with a stylus. So my handwriting, as it were, is extraordinarily awful when it comes to drawing with a mouse. Anyway, so when I have 3 students, Alfred, Betsy, and Charlie, and I'm interested in putting them in pairs, groups of 2, how many different individual groups of 2 are there? One way to organize this is with an n by n matrix. There are 3 students, so n is 3, so it would be a 3 by 3 matrix. And it would look like this. I'm going to put A, B, and C across the rows. And I'm going to put an A, B, and C across the columns. P.S. Yes, I did see whoever drew that. This is live, and technically you could draw it on it yourselves. But I ask that people don't draw. It's okay if you accidentally make a mark. Nothing can really harm me too much here, but it'll get confusing if too many people start trying to draw at the same time. All right, so you end up with a 3 by 3 set of cells, as it were. And that's what it's going to look like. And when we are looking at this sort of thing, there are three phrases that you should, at least those who've been in class with me already know by now. There's the so-called upper triangular. There's the so-called main diagonal. And there is the so-called, in a third color, lower triangular. So if I try to pair A with A, that doesn't make sense, right? Because a pair of students has to be two different students. But it turns out that A and B as a pair is the same as B and A as a pair, right? So when the, as it were, the order of the students matters, or whatever it is that you're looking at, then you have to distinguish between the lower triangular cells and the upper triangular cells. But when you're just dealing with pairs by themselves, AB and BA are the same. So you can just choose one of the two triangles to focus on. In this particular example, if I wanted to know how many pairs of students there are, I'm going to focus on the upper triangular, and I'd say, well, A and B is a pair, so I fill that one in. A and C is a pair, and B and C is a pair, and that's all. There's 3 cells. This should be not a surprise to anyone who's been in class with me. We've focused on this a great deal. But it turns out that not just for the sake of counting, you can also use such a table to organize your approach to a problem. And I'm going to do that in just a moment with the actual problem at hand. So in this case, rather than 3 students ABC, we have 4, well, okay, yeah, hold on, I have something else to say here. So I think what happened for some of you is that we finally got to contest day, and there was the pressure of performance, and some of you choked. It's that simple. It happens to everybody. It mattered. You suddenly got into your head, oh God, this matters. I need to make this happen. It's not happening. I can't do this. Oh, I've got to quit. I've got to give up, or something like that. And that's a shame. Those sorts of jitters are common. And you'll recall that I had been talking to you about it all year long. But this was, for many of you, your first competition. And so that's perfectly normal. And now you know what it's going to be like. There is no reason, especially for those students who are in the advanced course, that you couldn't have gotten at least one box to go green. Because they give you the problem. There's the sample input. There's the sample output. The first step is to do this by hand. Don't even think about coding. You get out a pencil, you get out paper, you figure out how you would do it by hand, and then you just tell the computer the instructions to do the same thing that you did. And you should at least get the sample problem. And you should get credit for that problem. And if you're lucky, or maybe if you're good, or you're just in your sane mind, if you figure out how to do it for the sample problem and your instructions generalize, instead of getting one box green, it'll look like this. You'll get all the boxes green, you'll solve the problem, you'll get full points. That's what we want. But you should at least focus on how can I do the sample problem and code something that would give the sample output given the sample input. If you find yourself saying, oh, but that means I need to figure out how to read from file and I don't remember how we did that, or I don't know how to write to file, or how do you do for loops, like, yeah, you may need to go review the basics of the language that you're operating in. And it's perfectly okay. Even if you've taken Java for USACO and, you know, for some of you in the Rising Bronze, this was your first try and you tried it and it's like, I don't quite remember how to do this. Just let me know. I'll figure something out for you. Just saying, oh, you've seen it before, so therefore you should have known better, that's not actually, that is not your fault. If you hear anybody say that, that is the fault of the person saying it to you. If I said that to you, I'm a bad teacher. You do not need to know something just because something was whirlwind toured to you at some point, like maybe months ago. So if you don't know it yet, yeah, maybe we need to recover the basics. But I don't think most of the students listening to me right now, that's the problem. You don't know how to do the basics. It's a question of, how do you solve the problem even by hand? And then we'll worry about how to actually solve it by coding it. Excuse me a second. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go back to the whiteboard app, and I am going to erase. Actually, I'm going to do it just below. But as I was saying, instead of students ABC, we now have cows 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is for the sample problem. Obviously, there may be more or fewer cows based on the actual test case, and you won't know what the actual test case is in the competition because they don't tell you. All you know is that you got the box green or red. But, okay, so what do we see here? There are some number of sessions. In this case, 3. That's K. There are some number of cows. There are 4 cows in this case. And in each session, all 4 cows compete. They get ranked. It's not unlike the problems that we do even in Rising Bronze and Advanced Bronze, you know? I give you all a challenge. You do the challenge. People get points. People get tie broken on time. And depending on how they did, there's a leaderboard. Somebody got first. Somebody got second. Somebody got last, all the way up and down. So in this particular session, for instance, cow number 4 beat everybody. Cow number 1 was in second place. Cow number 2 was in third place. And cow number 3 was in last place for this particular session. But in a separate session, actually, cow 3 actually beat cow 2, right? That's how we interpret this. So, how do we actually formalize exploring what's going on in the sample input in terms of this chart over here that I've sort of drawn? The first thing you're going to want to do is get rid of the central diagonal, because a cow, unless it was particularly schizophrenic, cannot compete with itself or win or lose against itself. So I'm just going to draw it like that, and I'm going to mark these as like do not consider. And as I say, when you're dealing with a problem like this, the first question you've got to ask, remember up here when I said Alfred and Betsy versus Betsy and Alfred are the same pair. Well, okay, that was true there, but here we say, okay, so cow 2 and cow 3 effectively competed with each other. And one of them won. And I say, is that useful or not? Do you know everything that you need to know here? The answer should come back as no, because you actually don't know who won. So in this case, you're actually dealing with a permutation instead of a combination. 2, 3 is different from 3, 2 if the first one wins against the second one, right? So I'm actually going to add a little label over here. The rows are the winner, as it were, and the columns are the loser, as it were. There are, if you were to count, there are 6 pairs, but there are 12 cells that we are concerned with, because in every single session, as I was calling it earlier, there are 6 each pair, either the one could beat the other or the other could beat the one. And we're going to keep track for every session where that happened. This, by the way, deviates. If you look at the official solution, they do it with counts. I'm going to do it a slightly different way than they do it with the solution, but it all ends up being sort of same idea. Henry's asking how to recenter, and I don't know exactly. Oh, you use the hand. I bet you're talking about on the whiteboard. Over here on the top right corner, there's a little hand. If you click on the hand, you can move your view of the whiteboard around. You can also, if you have a central mouse scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out, which might be handy. All right, so for this particular one, as I said, we're going to do this one by hand. I'm not even coding yet, and that's not a problem. The way I'm teaching it is very similar to the way I would actually go about solving this problem from scratch, so I would go a lot faster. But 4, 1, 2, 3. That means 4 beat 1, 4 beat 2, 4 beat 3, 1 beat 2, 1 beat 3, and 2 beat 3. So we're just going to record those facts. Okay, 4 beat 1, 4 beat 2, 4 beat 3. Then what was it? Then 1 beat 2, 1 beat 3, 1 beat 2, 1 beat 3, and 2 beat 3. Okay? I'm going to suggest that we actually just keep going, and then you'll see why I'm doing it this way. So then 4 beat 1, 4 beat 3, 4 beat 2. That's actually all the same thing. I'm not going to add a second X. I'm just going to record cases where one beat the other. All right? Then 1 beat 3 and 1 beat 2. That was already essentially marked as well. And then finally, 3 beat 2 this time. So 3, 2, we had an X there. And finally, 4 beat 2, 1, and 3. That's all the same, so I'm not going to change anything in the table. 2 beat 1 and 3. I think that's different. So let's see. 2 beat 1. That was new, and it had already beaten 3 previously. And then 1 beats 3. That had already happened before. All right, so